Welcome to Rejection Rehab, the brand spanking new podcast designed to help you get over that fear of rejection and to build lasting confidence. Each week, I interview a fascinating new human being, no more fascinating than none other than Anne Mahlum, founder of Solidcore and one of my very, very good friends. Welcome to the show.
You're welcome. Everybody's going to wonder how in the hell you got me on this show, but
well,
as you like to say, everybody has to do charity work.
Indeed they do. Thank you for getting that punch in first. There'll be a few sent in your direction, but as you will see, Anne is rather unflappable as she's built quite a lot of confidence through getting rejected quite a lot over the years. So Anne, this podcast is all about the fear of rejection, getting over it and building confidence. And you and I kind of discussed recently, there seems to be a bit of a crisis in confidence these days, self-esteem, a lot of fear of rejection. I mean, you've seen the stats recently, about 45% of guys between 18 and 25 haven't asked a girl out in person. I also read recently that about 80% of women have low self-esteem in the workplace and don't advocate for themselves. Just, first of all, why do you think this is happening right now? What's going on?
Well, I will come back to that question, but I want to tell people, if you can master this, look at the superpower that you have. 80% of women don't have confidence in the workplace. Imagine if you were one of the 20% that did, and how that's going to open up opportunity for you. So this is why this topic is so vital and important. And I think, Tom, you and I in our lives will show that just by shooting our shot and being unique and being willing to stand out and take the rejection has been a big part of high quality of life and actually success. So I think those stats, listen, the first stat definitely comes from online shit. You've got most of these kids who've never grown up or never lived any part of their life without a screen and social media and comments, and they're getting that dopamine rush of somebody liking, commenting, porn, you name it. And so the real life stuff hasn't ever actually had to come into play because they're getting their dopamine elsewhere. Where when you were in college, right? Because are you 55 now?
Oh my God, I'm going to get you back so badly.
Well, if I never let you get a word in. But, and let's be honest, people came here for me anyway. So when you were in college, right? There was no other way. We had to interact in person. Facebook and that kind of stuff was just kind of coming up. So we just out of necessity had to get more comfortable talking to people in person. And so if you don't force yourself to do that, you're going to be at a detriment for the rest of your life. And it's not going to get easier. Just like working out doesn't get easier as you get older. If you don't start now, it's just going to be harder with age.
I agree. And, people, they look at you, when I first met you, I have to say I was pretty impressed by your level of confidence. But, you're not born with confidence. We're all born.
You could have said so many other things you were impressed by. My volleyball skills,
Please, you do have some skills. Volleyball is certainly not one of them.
So not true.
So you're a very, very confident person, but, we weren't all born confident, and we've all faced rejection.
Wait, but let's talk about that. Why did you think I was confident? What happened?
Well, the way you introduced yourself to me, the way you held yourself, the way that you said immediately that you were going to beat me at volleyball. She didn't, by the way, in the first game, nor has she in lots of games subsequently. Just that you exuded confidence. Sometimes you can see by the physical way that you hold your body, which you are, and you are quite, a strong human being physically, and you were bantering pretty much straight away. You were throwing shade at
I think I remember this. I think I looked at your backpack and you had an Iron Man backpack, and I asked you if you ordered that off of Amazon.
What at all? So yeah, but that shows a bit of confidence, right? You've just met someone and you were already poking fun at me, already teasing me, and I thought and I was like, this is a confident person. But I just want to take this opportunity finally to get back a little bit at Anne. And I'm sure Anne wasn't born confident. And this is what Anne used to look like. And I'll try and do a full screen of that. But hold on, see if we can get that. I'll do a full screen of that in post. But
and he just reminded me that was my idea to show you all that. So you're welcome.
Well, it was, but it just also goes to show that money can indeed buy beauty. But let's go back. Let's go back to your childhood. You are, extra impressive because you didn't come from privilege at all.
Can you say that again? That silver spoon is sticking out of your mouth, and I couldn't hear what you said.
It pains me to be so kind about you, but but for those listening, Anne did not come from privilege. She dug herself out of a fairly difficult situation to become this very confident and successful person. Can you just talk about how difficult it was, and also the rejection you faced when you were growing up? Understandably, given that you look like that. But no, please tell us.
There is such thing as a bad photo. But
definitely in that case.
Yeah, I think listen, you start to pay attention. The first bout of rejection I can really, really remember was when I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old, and I liked a boy, and I told my friend to go see if he wanted to dance with me. And he said no, and he was like, no, she's fat, which I wasn't fat. I was not skinny. I was a normal kid. But that first thing was oh, that doesn't feel good. And instead of, being oh, that kid can go screw himself, I did actually be oh, maybe I need to be thinner and blah, blah, blah. So not a lot came out of that, but I remembered that moment and being that just didn't feel very good. So I took it upon myself to be I'm just going to make myself as fit, as athletic, as smart, as interesting as possible to not have rejection again, right? Because when you're a kid and you feel rejection, I don't care if it's from your parents or your friends. For me, I was oh, I never want to feel that again. So I'm going to do everything possible so that nobody will ever reject me again,
Interesting. You took it and then decided based on the fact that you were rejected that you were going to change. But I guess change maybe in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the skill sets as a 12, 13-year-old. I just was I don't want to feel that again. And so I actually, came up with this strategy when I was a kid, and it didn't work, but it worked in a lot of ways where I'm just going to make myself so exceptional that I actually don't have to ever deal with rejection. Everybody will want to be my friend, or a guy won't ever want to leave me, because after that happened when I was 12 or 13 years old, when I was 16, my dad's gambling issues surfaced and my family broke up, and I sort of felt rejected by my dad, who didn't choose, me and his family. I interpreted that you're choosing this addiction that you seemingly can't stop. So that was just another form of rejection. So for me, rejection was just pain, hurt. And so I just was how do I beat this? And my strategy was, I'm just going to make myself as interesting, as fit, as attractive, as you name it, as possible, so I would never have to deal with that.
I find that a very interesting way and a healthy way of dealing with rejection. But I'm gonna give you sort of another side of it. Let's say I go up to a girl, see a girl in the street, think she's beautiful, and I go up to her and I say, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I think you're really, really beautiful. And unless you're otherwise spoken for, I would absolutely love to ask you out on a date, right? If she goes ahead and says no to me, right? She may have said no for several reasons. One, she might be in a relationship. Two, she might just not be into me.
That's probable. That's probably
unlikely. I might not be her type. There might be, I'm 5'9". I'm not a really tall guy. Some girls will just only go for guys over. I can't change my height. That's something that I can't change. There might be things, but I'm the same person before I ask that girl out and after I ask that girl out.
Agreed.
Regardless of whether she says yes or no. And so it actually shouldn't, what you've done is you've taken it and then you've actually gone and tried to make yourself a better person as a result. And I think that's healthy. But you can also look at rejection and say, that's actually that person, not me. I'm fine just the way I am. I can't change, there are certain unchangeables. I can't change my height. I can't change, I could dye my hair, I guess, but I can't change the fact that I've got curly hair and so on. They may not like those things. And I'm fine with that. And I've been rejected, but you know what? I am still a strong, confident person. And that's more their reason for rejecting me than who I am.
Totally. And I think, again, you are a 55-year-old man.
Can we just get this clear? That I'm not 55. I'm not telling you my age.
But that is again, evolved sense of Don't spit out your rejection.
She's ruining any chances of me ever having a relationship in the future right now, single-handedly.
No, you look great for 55. I think people are going to think.
Oh my God. This face has not had any Botox, or but clearly, obviously, given the wrinkles. Look at this. Look at how much money has been spent on this. Half of her fortune, by the way, she sold Solidcore for $300 million. Half of that has been spent on her face. Sorry.
And I still have more money than you.
Carry on. No, this is what I'm talking about. You're unflappable. Like you have such confidence that I can like tease you and I can never ever actually insult you. Sorry, carry on. I think that we went slightly off topic.
So that is an involved sense of, and I don't think that's helpful, frankly, for the viewers. Just be like, like you can't change anything, whatever. And not that I don't agree with that, but there's like 3 phases to rejection. I think when you're not familiar with it or you're working to get over it and how we respond to it. One is what I did, which is like, oh, that didn't feel good. I'm going to do everything possible to not get rejected again. 2, you know what? I'm just never going to ask anybody out again. I'm never going to put myself in a situation where someone's going to say no to me, which is what the majority of the population does. They just don't try, because hearing a no from the boss that you're not good enough for the promotion is too difficult to take. But if I never ask, I'll never know. Asking that girl out that like is the woman of my dreams, at least for what I'm looking at her now, if I don't ask her, I'll never actually know. And I get to carry around with me that it could have been a possibility. So we like hang on to the what could have been. Once she says no, that's it. You know what I mean? You get no more story in your head. So those are sort of the 2 ways that I think most people approach rejection. And then the third one, Tom, which is exactly right. If I see somebody, I've already decided, so have you, if you are physically attracted to that person or not, right? So if we're going to talk about rejection as it relates to dating for a second, they've already made up their mind physically. Am I into you or am I not? You going over there, they can be like, wow, that guy's actually funnier than I thought. And like may end up having a conversation with you or something else that like they may have just decided, oh, that guy actually wasn't funny and I'm not attracted to him at all. But you can't change the fact at all what somebody already thinks of you physically. And I think that that's a huge part of what you've been able to do of going and asking out, because I've seen this in live and in person and in real life, of being like, it doesn't matter. She's already decided. So if I'm not her cup of tea,
quite literally, this is actual tea, Anne's drinking it, but she's not having milk in it, so it's not really like proper English tea. Anyway, carry on.
Yes, I don't need milk in my coffee right now. But you've decided that like you are so comfortable and with yourself. And another reason of getting over rejection, you guys, is do you like yourself? And if you like yourself, rejection just doesn't faze you that much. So when anybody talks to me about rejection, I kind of try to get to, there's the underlining things that you are either afraid for someone else to see about you, or you actually don't like yourself that much. And so you're assuming that that person isn't going to like you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And when I was talking about you're the same person before and after, I meant more you should feel the same way about yourself before and after, regardless of the answer, right? If it's yes, okay, you might be like, great, I feel like a little momentary confidence boost. Mm-hmm. But you're exactly the same person before and after they've said yes or no. And you should, like you said, if you like yourself, you're going to like yourself before and after. If you're on a low or you're struggling with confidence, it's going to be harder, I think, to recover from those things.
But Tom, that you're like hammering on my point here. So like if you are afraid of rejection, chances are you need to work on yourself and stop rejecting yourself. You're probably saying pretty negative things to yourself in the morning that like, you're never going to find a girlfriend, or like, you're never going to make money, or you're never, or like, I should be so further along than where I am in my life and I'm not interesting enough, right? If you're saying those things, I'm automatically thinking you're going to think those things about me. So you're not going to like me. So I'm not even going to give you the opportunity to reject me.
Yeah.
So the way to like build more confidence is start figuring out how to make yourself proud of who you are, right? How you spend your time, your accomplishments, your achievements. I think working out is an easy, low-hanging fruit. It's a layup. Start working out, start feeling good, start showing yourself that you're getting stronger, that you're making right decisions. And it's like unbelievable, I think, what happens when you start taking care of yourself.
I agree with that. I mean, absolutely. But I also want to add on to that. Sometimes you just got to think, screw it, I'm just going to do it, right? I just want to take a risk, just put myself out there. I'm not used to approaching someone in person. Go up and actually, go up and do it. Because think to yourself in that situation, what's the worst that's going to happen? And the reason why, like physiologically, why we get so worked up about this is...
Tom's a doctor, by the way, so he can say things like physiology and we have to listen.
So it is true. I am a doctor. And this goes back to the fight and flight response. So your sympathetic nervous system, when you get all excited and you're either going to fight or you're going to run away. In my case, I'd probably usually run away. But that's called self-deprecation. You should learn about that, Anne.
I could use some self-deprecation medicine.
So that system is triggered when we're in a situation where we feel like we might get rejected. Same deal with public speaking, right? We are not, and the reason why that system exists is because back in the day when we were, cavemen, we had to have that system available to us in case we had to protect ourselves from lions and so on and so forth and protect our families. But it's left over from that period of history, and it comes out to play in periods where we don't really need it. You don't need it in public speaking. Okay, maybe it might help you. It might, elevate your heart rate a little bit. It might make you a little bit more pumped up for that speech. But a lot of the things like shaking hands and so on, you don't actually need it, but it's there. So that fight and flight response is there. And
which comes from our amygdala, by the way.
Look at this.
You don't have to get a doctor's degree to know this shit.
I've taught her so much. But you can tell yourself, okay, this is just a fight and flight response. I'm going to work through it and I'm just going to go for it. And going and doing it afterwards, when the fight and flight response goes down and your parasympathetic nervous system takes over, rest and digest, you feel so good. So not only are you, like, bit by bit, each time you do that, you get more and more used to it. So same deal with public speaking. The more you do it, the more you get used to it. The more you go out and ask, a girl out or a guy out. I encourage girls to do it as well. It's 2025. Anyone should be able to ask anyone out if they want to. Or, asking for that raise in the workplace, whatever it is. The more that you do it, the less that you trigger that sympathetic nervous system and the less you get worked up and the less you fear it. So actually just saying, screw it, I'm going to go for it. I know I'm feeling worked up. I know I'm feeling scared, but just going for it, the more you'll get used to it and the easier it will become overall.
Yeah, I like to I speak about this fear a lot because people ask, and they look at my career or whatever. It's like, how did you get through all the limiting beliefs and doubts? Were you just born this way? Did you X, Y, Z? And I'm like, no, of course not. And I still have those things today. Like I do a lot of public speaking and my palms still get nervous. And I frankly love it because I know that there's an opportunity for growth here, that I have very little notes. I have to go on stage and captivate people for 45 minutes to 60 minutes and figure out how to get them to like walk away with actionable items. And when you feel your like heart rate, rising, it's like, oh, this is a really great sign that I'm doing something that's helping me grow. Because most people, when you say to them, hey, Tom, are you interested in growth, like personal growth, professional growth? 99% of people normally say, yeah, but they do nothing to actually push through those moments of growth. They feel the fear, and then we convince ourselves, oh, this feels scary, therefore I shouldn't do it, right? So we let the fear take over growth when, as you said, we're not being like chased by a bear, and they feel the exact same way. If something came in here and we got like all nervous and scared, there's no difference between that and like going in, speaking in front of 1,000 people. You're still going to feel like you want to shit your pants. Right. So like you have to decipher. And most of the times we don't live in an environment anymore where like we are in danger every single day. So I like to tell people, stop. You don't need to be fearless. That's bullshit. But you do need to have a practice for fear. And you need to be like, hey, thanks. Like, I appreciate you showing up because this means I'm about to do something that's going to help me grow. And it is those people that can actually stop, pause, show gratitude, and then act that end up in the 20% of the workforce that like aren't afraid to ask for a raise because they know their value. They aren't afraid to speak up about something in fear that you might have an opposing opinion to me. And I'm like, that's okay. We have a difference of opinion. They aren't afraid to go ask. I mean, guys, I've been literally engaged 3 times, married once. Every single serious relationship I've ever had, I have been the one to pursue the guy every time, So it's like, worst case scenario, as you said, they just tell you, I'm not interested, or I have a girlfriend, or I have something else. But the worst case scenario is usually a whole lot better than people
Yeah.
allow themselves to see.
And if you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to know. I think you sent me this quote. It was, if you knew you were 30 rejections away from meeting the love of your life, how quickly would you get rejected?
Right.
You do it like that day, you know? Same deal with the dream job, dream life, dream anything. You would do it so quickly. And that's the truth. You might even be like one rejection away from meeting the love of your life or getting your dream job. But if you don't go through that rejection, you're never going to know.
So Tom, what's some homework that you can we can give people? Like, because to your point, my homework for you is I want you to think about what you think of yourself, right? Because that's important. If you can really be honest, and I have a really good friend that this friend where his self-esteem is so low, and he'll reject others because he doesn't want people to see the real inside for him. And he's afraid of if he's going to be accepted or not. So that fear of rejection causes him to reject you first. Yep. Right. So to me, I'm there's some real deep work there, and you got to be proud of who you are. And when you are proud of who you are and confident of who you are, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks of you if you have such a high sense of self.
Yeah.
Truly. So writing down those things. Why are you a great person? Why would someone want to date you? Why would somebody want to be your friend? Why are you the right person to get the promotion? And if you don't have a long list there, I think you have to start there.
Yeah, and that's fantastic homework. For me, the homework that I would give is, and this isn't an original from me, I think it was someone like Tony Robbins or Tim Ferriss who wrote about this, is if you are very nervous and fearful of rejection when it comes to, asking someone on a date or something like that in real life, it's very easy to start with just when you're walking down the road, going to work. I know a lot of people work remotely these days, but you have to go outside at some point. So going to the supermarket, whatever it is, just maintaining eye contact with someone at the beginning and smiling at them, not saying anything. That can be the first kind of little, dipping your toe in the water. Then, you do that the first few days, first week. Next week, you do the same thing, but you say hi. You just say hi to random strangers. Just say hello or good morning or whatever it is. People used to do that a lot more than they do that these days. Yeah. And then finally, you can get to the point where, look, if you see someone you find attractive, and like I said, anyone should be able to do this if you do it in a respectful fashion. I think if you I give everyone this line, and you start with an apology because you are interrupting them. You say, "I'm really sorry to interrupt you." And then you get straight to the point. But I think if you do think they're beautiful, say it. I think you're really, really beautiful. And unless you're otherwise spoken for, I would love to ask you out on a date. And that is, you've been respectful. You've told them what you think.
You give them a compliment.
You've given them a compliment. The worst case scenario here is that you've given someone a compliment and they go on with their day. Worst case scenario.
I know that probably doesn't happen too often to you, but even in the elevator coming up here, this guy's like, "Oh, have you been told you look like pink?" I'm like, "A time or two."
Did he have a big white stick in front of him?
And I'm like, "A time or two." And then, I make the joke that I'm like, "Oh, but if you heard me saying, you'd think otherwise." And he's like, "Yeah, but she's a beautiful woman." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a side-handed compliment, but thank you." You know what I mean? But it still made me smile. Yeah. And I was like, "Thank you so much."
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Most people are kind enough. If you give them a compliment about something, they're going to be like, "Wow, that was so nice. Thanks for telling me that." It feels good.
And also being direct, because, I had one guy who I play volleyball with occasionally here. I said to him, "How's it going? How's life?" And he said, "Oh, it's all right." And I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Oh, just dating in Miami is just the worst." I was like, "Why? How are you meeting girls?" And he's like, "Well, the apps are terrible." And I'm like, "Do you meet anyone in real life?" He said, "Yeah, I tried to." And I was like, "Well, tell me, how do you start a conversation? And he said, "Okay, for example, I was in Trader Joe's the other week and I wanted to start a conversation with this woman. And I said, 'Oh, you've got such a nice dress.'" That was his opener, right? And he didn't end up converting it into a date. And I think one of the reasons is perhaps because that's not where he went. Maybe he did like her dress, but that was not what his intention was. His intention was he wanted to ask her out on a date. I think if you are clear and honest with your intentions from the outset, no one can fault you. No one can fool you. You are being honest. Yes, okay, maybe she had a nice dress, but that is a kind of...
it's a thank you and walk away.
Yeah, just be black and white, We're all human beings. We all find things beautiful, and there's a lot of...
Also, can I say something else there?
Please.
You're waiting for the woman then to say something of "Oh, thanks, I really appreciate that." And then where does the conversation go, right? So instead of just being like, "Hey, you know what I mean?" And as a heterosexual woman, even though I just said, I've pursued all the men in my life. It still feels good for a man to be assertive and direct, whether or not what the outcome was. But he was putting the work on her and being like, what is she going to say here? You know, and frankly, when you are passive, I interpret passive men as unconfident men. I interpret passive men as amenable and not direct and not decisive. And those usually aren't traits that heterosexual women find attractive in men. We want decisiveness. We want assertiveness, and those two things signal confidence.
Yeah. And confidence is this sort of, there's two halves of this podcast, right? It's about getting over that fear of rejection and building lasting confidence. And they're kind of intertwined. Because if you can get over that fear of rejection, that is certainly one way to build a huge amount of confidence. But I want to go to you. So we talked quite a lot about dating, but you've obviously been an incredibly, as much as I hate to admit it, an incredibly successful business person. And we're not, like I mentioned earlier, we're not born with confidence. But it's interesting when you look at kids, right? Or toddlers, right? They have zero fear of rejection, right? They'll just go up to another toddler and then be like, start playing, you know, boy or girl. Doesn't matter. They've got zero. So,
or they'll tell you like, why is your voice funny? Like they have no
filter. Yeah. You know, and it's funny. And then at some point, right, you start to lose that confidence and you start to gain a fear of rejection, right? And then only later on in life do you end up basically fixing that, right? Everyone as like a teenager is awkward and I think lacks confidence. I don't think there's any person in this world who hasn't questioned themselves at some point in their lives. And I'm wondering with you, I know you talked a little bit about rejection earlier. How did you build so much confidence, both like personally and in a business fashion? Like you built a $300 million empire, and that didn't, you know, that came from building other things. You also built Back on My Feet, which is an amazing charity that I want you to talk about too. How did you build that confidence? I think people want to know how you became so unbelievably confident.
Well, I think there was a realization of the stuff that you just said, which was everybody else doesn't seem to be confident. Like watching other people, especially women around, where it was like everybody's trying to fit in. And if I tried to fit in, I am not going to get what I want. I am going to be average. And I associated all of those, remember, average and blending in with hurt, pain, and rejection. So there was a big motivator for me there to say, I'm going to be as interesting as possible. I'm going to do things that are going to give me a leg up to try to escape pain. That was really a big part of me trying to, when my confidence came from that sense of fuel. Just like, I know Tom will probably talk about this, but like you've mentioned to me, you were bullied, you know, when you were younger too. Yeah. So a lot of these things come from like being sick and tired of being bullied and giving your power away. So for me, it was, I'm going to finish college in 3 years because nobody else is going to do that. So to give me a feather in my cap. I'm more interesting than everybody else that I went to school with just because of that. Okay, what else can I do? I was running marathons. Well, if I'm going to run marathons, why don't I go on one run on every continent, right? It makes me interesting. And like going to do that, traveling by myself, also putting myself in uncertain situations, builds up your confidence that like I went to, you know, Australia and Bangkok and South Africa by myself in my 20s, knowing nobody when there really wasn't, I mean, my cell phone didn't work there. It was like, I remember when I went to South Africa and I wanted to go for a run and this guy's like, are you kidding me? Like you can run around this parking lot and that is it. But like, there was just all of these things that I was trying to do to make myself so interesting that by doing that, this confidence started to grow. And then realizing, the more I stand out, the more people pay attention to me. The more people ask me questions, the more I have to offer in conversations. And then physically, right, I started, like, I cut my hair off when I was in my early 30s. And it is not strange for me to go someplace one time and go back. People are like, you were here before. Because I don't have long brown hair. Yeah. And I don't have long blonde hair. And I don't dress like everybody else. And I don't look like everybody else. And that is on purpose. I want you to notice me because I know I can back it up with like my personality and everything else. So again, my strive for confidence came out of the fear for rejection and not wanting the pain that came along with that. And then realizing, gosh, everybody else plays it so safe. You just are opening it up for anybody who's willing to play the game. of how much opportunity is actually there. I mean, Tom, you go on more dates than anybody I know.
Can you not tell everyone that? This is not necessarily true.
But
we might have to edit that bit out.
But Tom, I was saying that of like, it is this level of, I'm just gonna do a little bit matter of odds, and you know that nobody else is asking girls out in person.
Yeah,
they're so afraid to that when you get a girl who gets a compliment, they're just like, you're so different, and people respond to people who are different. So I'm gonna choose to say, like I'm gonna look different, right? I'm not gonna look like everybody else. So I already have your attention, and now the fact that I've graduated college in 3 years, ran a marathon on every continent, built a nonprofit, built a for-profit. Now you're like, I want to get, she's unlike any other person that I've ever met before. So I already have your attention. And then obviously the confidence just comes from doing all the action. So sticking out is wildly helpful to build confidence.
I agree. I also think that working, and I know this phrase, people say a lot, working on yourself, but I think that some of my confidence came from, I think I was quite insecure in my 20s. And I think a lot of that, I mentioned to you, I was very badly bullied when I was at boarding school. And I hadn't really faced those issues head on. And it took basically me getting actual therapy for that and talking about it and getting comfortable speaking about it before I actually gained, I think, true confidence. So I think there is, you mentioned doing things that make you stand out, becoming physically fit, looking good, and all of those things. But I also think becoming comfortable with who you are,
agree,
which I think can only come from facing your demons head on and talking about them and getting it out. And I think it's especially important for guys because I think guys, we're trained to be macho, not talk about our feelings, not to get it out there. And thankfully, the tide is turning on that a lot, which is great. But certainly when I was growing up, we didn't talk about how we felt and so on. And it was only later on that I started finally speaking about these things. And I think to get true confidence, you have to be comfortable in your own skin. And to be comfortable in your own skin, you have to face your demons. And to face your demons, you have to talk about them.
Yeah, agree. I mean, kind of went back to the point I already made on this podcast, which was exactly that. You will never get over your fear of rejection if you're rejecting yourself every day. And if you are just not happy with who you are and how you're living your life. I mean, I can remember when I was in my 20s and I was searching for who I was. I was trying to figure out what my purpose was. I wanted fulfillment in my life. I kind of felt like I know I'm supposed to do something. I just can't figure it out. Someone tell me what it is. And I didn't go out very much. So when I would go out, if there'd be a guy who was interested in me, I would be like, are you kidding me? You're interested in this person? I don't even like me. So my rejection came from gosh, you're going to hold me so far. You're going to hold me back from who I really can be. And I can't believe, I almost judged you for being interested in the person that I was because I was just nowhere near, I thought, my potential. So that's I don't even know where I was going with that point.
No, it's okay. We'll edit that bit out. I want to touch on something that I'll ask. I think most of my guests on this show, you've gained a huge amount of confidence over your life, and you've lived a long life. You're 63. So, where do you think there's the line between confidence and arrogance? Because now we're going the other end of the spectrum, right? We're going from low self-esteem, which I think we've given quite a few decent ways of trying to build up self-esteem, build confidence, face rejection head on, and putting yourself out there. But you also don't want to, once you've gained that confidence, tip the scale to arrogance. And where do you think that dividing line is? And I will say this about you, as much as I hate giving you compliments, you're not arrogant at all. And you still have humility a little bit. But
appropriate amount.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the right to be, no one has the right to be arrogant and not be a good person, but you've managed to keep your humility. And where do you think that line is? And how do people not cross from confidence to arrogance?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if everybody would say that about me. I'm sure there's some people who would say, oh my God, Anna's so arrogant. But I have to decide that for myself. One, I'm confident talking about the things I'm confident talking about. So I'm never going to shy away from that. And if I have an opinion on something, I'm gonna say it. But I think the line is probably kindness. You know, like people who are arrogant act like they're better than people because of what they've either achieved or what they have or what they look like. And they treat people like they're less than. And I just don't have a big tolerance for that. I don't care, you know, who you are, what you've done, what you look like. If you don't treat people kindly or treat people differently based off of race, class, money, whatever, I don't tolerate that. So I think the fine line of confidence is, again, kindness and probably being able to say like what you don't know. Like I know what I know and I'm comfortable talking about that, but I don't pretend to be an expert on everything. If someone asks me a question about something, I'm like, you know, I'm not the right person to either comment on that or give advice on that. Like, I don't think I know everything. And I think that's also another part of the line.
Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to ask you about is it's rarer for, you know, women to be multi-millionaires than it is for guys. You are an exception to the rule in that you have made it into the realm of being a female multi-millionaire. Do you think that women face more rejection than men, and women have their own unique types of difficulties when it comes to rejection, when it comes to confidence, when it comes to self-esteem that men don't inherently have?
Oh, yeah. I think for women, you know, we're still moving past the being chosen, right? Because, you know, even think about how people used to announce when people got married, you're man and wife, you know, like you're a mister no matter what.
Doctor, actually.
Well, yes, but...
Correction.
You know, but that doesn't change whether or not you get married, where for me, it's Miss, Mrs. or Ms. Like my whole first, what is that called? Not a pronoun, your title.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But you know what I mean? It's dependent on, you know, my relationship with a man.
Yeah, right.
So again, like women, there is an essence of we're waiting to be chosen by somebody. I think that we are moving beyond that. And we are sort of saying, you know, I'm not going to allow that or get married. And we could talk about those statistics too. So from that aspect, I still think that permeates society. And then two, with business, totally. I mean, women get less than 2% of all private equity dollars still, which is crazy. So we're used to hearing no. I mean, I can remember specifically, Tom, when I was running back on my feet, that nonprofit that I had started from scratch, built, created, raised tons of money, scaled across the country, negotiating my salary with my board of directors, who happened to be mainly men. And we were $50,000 apart, you know, at my last like year and a half or 2 years at Back on My Feet. And I could feel, like, I remember telling them that. I'm like, I feel like you are looking at me and acting like I should, like you're patting me on the head or the back and being like, you're a single woman. Like, this is enough. And instead, you know, I stepped into my power in that moment and I said, listen, it is your job as the board of Back on My Feet to make fiduciary decisions for this organization. If you think that you can get somebody to come in here and do the job that I do for this organization as its CEO for the salary that you are recommending, I support that. But that's not going to be me. My salary demand has not changed. I am not compromising. This is what I'm asking for. And if you don't think that that is fair or commensurate with the value that I bring, I understand. And they end up, you know, giving it to me. But like in that moment, right? I think most women don't stand up to the men at the table. We sort of are like, yeah, maybe they're right. I'm just grateful to be here. You know, and we end up taking the bullshit or the low offer. And Tom, you also know me well enough to know that I'm always going to choose empowerment. And so even the wage gap and the rejection gap, call it, I always want to place that on women. It's not going to get better if we don't stand up for ourselves. If when you hear a no, you don't back down. If, you know, you don't keep like pushing and going or negotiating, learn the negotiation skills, get rid of the old narrative of the, I'm just grateful to be here and thankful to be considered, you know, thank you for the opportunity, all of that stuff, which again, it sounds gracious, but women are really capable and powerful and add a ton of value. They just need to believe it first. And so it's not just society's fault. Women need to step in and get comfortable making the big asks.
Well said. I'm going to conclude with a few questions that I want to ask all of my guests on this show.
Okay, just to be clear, I have not seen these questions.
You haven't. But I know some of them. One of them at least I know the answer to, and they're not difficult questions.
Okay.
So nothing to be fearful of. And I know that
I wouldn't be fearful of because I'm not afraid of rejection.
clearly. And I know that you've got to get to beach volleyball because you're very. You need to practice a lot. Let's just say that. That's being very kind. So Anne, if you could recommend one book to everyone, what book would it be?
Well, since we talked about the negotiation book, I'll say Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. That is a great book for confidence and how to, when you find yourself, someone negotiate, which can be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Most people back down. So for that, I would say, Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference.
Okay.
Have you read it?
I started to read it and I didn't get through it, but now that you've said it, I will try. And because there was another book that I mentioned that I heard you say that you really liked, which was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah. It is. I mean, that book is amazing. I thought I would give a little bit of variety because I'm sure all your listeners have heard me on so many other podcasts.
Yes, I know.
But no, I mean, How to Win Friends and Influence People is just one of those. Have you read that one?
No, I haven't. Because I'm terrible at winning friends and influencing people. So
yeah, but you really do need to. Tom, will learn and be like, wow, these things are like good reminders, and you realize how often people just don't do these things and expect results by being kind of a crappy person. But
yeah.
Anyway,
favorite movie?
A Few Good Men.
Why?
Oh my God. I love that movie. I love the twist at the end. I love figuring movies like that where you've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And how Tom Cruise figures out oh, you didn't, when he gets Jack Nicholson in the middle where he's like, well, wait, I thought your men, always obey orders like they do. And it's like, well, if you gave them an order not to touch, Mr. Santiago or Sergeant Santiago, why did they do it? And he's like, well, sometimes they take matters into their own hands. And he's like, no, you just made it perfectly clear. And he gets him. Do you know the scene I'm talking about?
Is this when he goes at the end? Is like, you can't handle the truth?
But you have to watch it. After this, we're going to watch it again real quick. But he literally, this guy has to say what he did because he wants you to know that, you don't have the power. You have no idea the decisions that I have to make. And he wants to say it. And Tom Cruise in that movie knows how to get him to say it. And it is just so good.
All right. Okay. We'll watch that scene. And then finally, and this can be the same answer to both if you want. What's the best advice you've ever received and the best advice you've ever given?
Okay, the best advice I've ever received is probably, first thing that popped in my head was probably from my dad when we were kids and it was freezing in North Dakota and it was probably February and we were bored and what's there to do? And my dad's like, go get your swimsuits. And we're like, our swimsuits, we pull up to a hotel and we're like, are we getting a hotel room for the night? And my dad's like, no, but I want you to walk in there like you own the place and ask where the pool is. And we swam all afternoon. But that is that kind of energy. I mean, Tom, trust me, even I was about to just walk into your place downstairs because this guy wasn't coming back. When you look around like someone should be questioning you, people question you. But when you walk in you're supposed to be there, and whether with such directness or something, people will not question your seat at the table or anything else. You have to act like you're supposed to be there.
Disclaimer: we are not condoning trespassing, but I do love that. That is another little confidence tool there.
Yeah. Walking like you own the place.
Well, fantastic. Anne, thank you so much for...
Oh, wait, no. Best piece of advice I've ever given?
Oh, we don't need to hear that. Go ahead. Sorry. I thought it might have been one and the same, but go ahead.
No, that's what received. I mean, given, there's so many things, Tom.
I know. Where do we start? You can write a book about all the great advice that you've given.
Well, I'll give you the business advice then, so we'll mix it up. I think the best...
Can you do one business and one personal?
Okay. So one business was... have a very clear vision for what you're trying to accomplish, because it's really easy to get distracted in business. And if you don't have a vision that you're going to stay true and committed to, I think you're going to feel like you're treading water, or all of a sudden you're 2 years into this thing and it's messy and whatnot. So starting back on my feet and starting Solidcore, I always had a clear vision for what I was trying to achieve and accomplish. Everything else was noise. So that's the business advice. The personal advice, I will actually share with you from Sahal Bloom, which I think is just really great. And because it's something that's really relevant in my life, when he's like, don't just focus on your self-worth about your professional mission, which a lot of us do, particularly men. Figure out a life mission to have, because you can achieve your life mission every single day. Like before I was here with you, I was having lunch with a good friend that I haven't seen in a while, and we had an hour of uninterrupted time. Before that, I went to acupuncture to try to heal some of my injuries and had a great, lovely time with Mia from the beach. Now I'm here with you, and then volleyball. And I'm like, wow, this was a high quality relationship day. And I am the type of person who values my relationship. So this was a reaffirming action for me on like me driving down to the beach today for 40 minutes and getting to do all of these things, which hopefully added value to other people's lives as well as mine. Even though none of it was, I mean, we all know I'm not getting paid to be here. So none of it was around money, but it was...
Doesn't deserve it.
But it was around, again, those quality relationships that I really value.
Absolutely, and I could not have said it better myself. This has been an absolute pleasure. What a star to have on the very first inaugural podcast that I do. Thank you so much for coming. This has been Rejection Rehab. Anne Mahlum, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.